Hello, world. This is Hello Chaos, the podcast about the ups and downs, ins and outs, joys and struggles on entrepreneurship. I am your host, single today, Jennifer Oladipo, aka Jenno, but I can just be Jennifer since there's only one here. My co-host Jennifer Sutton is out today, but I am so glad to welcome to the studio Will Patterson of PatCon Industries. He is also here in South Carolina, here in Columbia, South Carolina, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things, but especially for those of you who are in a family business, that's what we're focusing on today. So it's going to be so interesting. Welcome, Will. How are you?
Doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the chaos.
By the way, before we start off too much, I just want to give a quick plug. The concept of Hello Chaos and normalizing the chaos and the day-to-day activities of somebody starting off the business, it is so real.
Yeah.
I know for a fact when I in the very beginning phases of taking over a business and transitioning it, there was a deep and intimate relationship with chaos for catching projects. I remember specifically, there was this project that a guy calls me. He's like, "Hey, well, I have nobody bidding this project. I need you to look at it." And it's it's going to be due in 2 days. And I'm like, "Okay, sure." I open up the plans. It's going to probably take me 2 weeks to do regularly. And I'm just like, okay, this aligns with my goals. This is what I need. This is a jump off point. I need this. I have to knock it out. I drink Red Bull the night before and just go and go and go. So no, the normalization of chaos and just putting it out front and center, that is so awesome.
I'm so glad to hear that. I actually thought that this would be the hardest part. I was like, I don't know, people don't want to talk about their struggles. They don't want to, but I think if you just open the door to that conversation, people are ready to step through because nobody asked. Everybody wants the pretty stories. So let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about PatCon Industries. What are these projects you're bidding on? What is the company? What do you do?
Okay, so PatCon Industries, first, we are a general contractor and minority business enterprise / small business enterprise that specializes in masonry work. For those who are unfamiliar with construction, we take bricks and blocks, put them on a building, and make that building look really, really good. And something that we pride ourselves on is, one, making sure buildings look good, and two, we go about it as a community aspect because we're not just building buildings, but we're building the community. And it's just an awesome experience to get people from the community to grow them up and also build these buildings and then create a big picture that looks amazing. That's what we're about at PatCon Industries.
That's awesome. So when you say you're building the community, what do you mean?
Okay, so we say building the community inside and out. So first, when we start inside, we want to start with home, and that starts with our actual employees. In 2019, we launched an apprenticeship program, and in the apprenticeship program, we took people that are we focused on people that are marginalized, people that look like me, people that didn't have jobs, and we wanted to give them careers because it's kind of like that old saying that if you teach a man if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, he'll be fed for his whole life. And it was something that kind of happened organically because I know that at first we were a small family business that was just focused on providing for our family. But as we grew, it's kind of cliche, but our family grew with the business, and we take pride in this business is here to make sure we eat, but not just that we eat, that others eat. And one of our mission statements is we want to change the phrase, I'm here because of my community, or I am a product of my community. Because usually when people say that, there's usually always a negative connotation attached with that. It's usually somebody that looks like me that is saying, this is why I am not where I want to be in my life. And we want to change that. So we started this apprenticeship program. We got people that were marginalized. We started them in the apprenticeship program because from my dad laying bricks, he had a fabulous life. He's able to provide for his family. For me, I'm able to have a family, able to have a house, able to have cars, able to send my kids to school, feed them, all these wonderful things. My grandfather, he was able to provide for his family, and we wanted to give this opportunity to other people who didn't have opportunity. Mm-hmm. So we started the apprenticeship program, and that's how we build the people on the inside of the community. And then we build structures of the community because I'm sorry, this is so long-winded, but
no, it's good. It's good.
When you close your eyes and you think of Egypt, mm-hmm. and you think of all the images that associate with Egypt, I would be hard pressed for you not to imagine the pyramids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you think of and let's go with a different community. When you think of United States Air Force, it'll be hard for you not to imagine an airplane. Mm-hmm. And we don't build the actual airplane, but we'll build airplane hangars, mm-hmm. so that we're part of the community by actually building the structure and things that people are inside the community are going to interact with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Many of times people use landmarks to be oh, we're right across the street from Strong Thermos Fitness Center, a project that we built. And when you think of cities, New York City or anything of that nature, you think of what that city looks like. And it's the people inside the city and it's the buildings inside the city. At least that's from my perspective.
Yeah. And, yeah. So, I mean, that's so interesting, that thing of even seeing your structures as not just a building or a project or a portfolio piece, but actually like a Lego brick in the community. And that makes it what it is. Yeah, that's so cool. So the other thing you mentioned, though, was a pretty long family lineage in the industry, in the craft. So the first thing that jumps to mind is how do you... two things. How do you, carry that forward, as the person who is heading the company now? And then, mm-hmm. I mean, that just seems like a lot of pressure because especially the nature of the work, you've got people who are into precision and, excellence, and everybody can see your mistakes literally when they happen. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first thing, we are a family business. And we take that concept, we're family, this is who it is. And we're we really mean that. And so one of the things about when you're with family is you have to be very comfortable with other people knowing your flaws. Mm. And that's not just I don't know if that's just in the family business space, but I feel like that's in almost all business spaces, because when you're looking up for your team, now that I'm at the helm, people look at me Will, what are we going to do about this situation? Plenty of times I give them solutions. Hey, look, we're going to change this up. We're going to focus on military projects. We're going to start working on federal contracting, or better yet, previously, hey, look, we're going to go to the private market because that's where it seems like our most opportunities are at. And those shifts have to happen. But the part of having a relationship with people, letting people understand that, hey, look, we're all trying to do our best in this, and we're all still learning. And I'm going to make mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes. And there's going to be lots of chaos in the mix through all of this still. And there's going to be fires burning. But throughout all of this, it's going to be okay because we've done this before. Mm-hmm. We've had these fires. We're good. And that transparency, it builds a really strong core.
And is that easier then because it is a family-run business to be transparent, or
yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then I say and no, because the awesome part is, listen, I'm able to tell people, hey, look, I made a mistake with this, or hey, look, we need to change something, or better yet, hey, look, we need to win a project in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and people are in crunch mode because it's a serious thing. And it's also important to let people understand when there are fires and let them see the fires, especially when they're tiny at first, because you can't just show people a burning building and be oh, look, we have this burning building, because a lot of people will be okay, well, I need to get out. But if you introduce them to the small fires, you prepare them for bigger fires.
Yeah.
And it builds a strong core, because they're literally, where it's hello chaos. Walk in this door, it's 9:00 on a Monday, or better yet, 8:00. And like you walk in and it's like, hey, Will, this is happening. And it's like, oh, there's a 9-foot ogre in the front of my desk and he brought cousins with him and it's a bat. And okay, I gotta handle this. Let me knock this out real quick. And then let me get about my day at 11 o'clock. We'll make this all work out. That's the good part.
Yeah.
And then the bad part is it's the vulnerability aspect of it. Because if you're transparent and people know your flaws, sometimes you start becoming self-conscious of your flaws. And one of my oh shit moments was I hired somebody, and this was very early on in my career, and I thought that they were not the fit for the company. And I thought that they were not successful because of what they were bringing to the table. But as you grow, you start to see things a little bit differently. And I'm starting to come to the realization that at that point in my juncture, I wasn't ready to hire somebody at that level. They were a little bit more finer in the crafts, and they didn't have like the entrepreneurial mindset as me.
Yeah.
And they weren't like able to create something in the midst of chaos. They needed a little bit more stability. But if I had put this person in a more stable situation, they would have did fantastic. And it's the concept of understanding, like, man, like, you need to grow. And this is a big thing that like I actually tell people. It's important for not me to grow, but the business to grow, because we are growing you. And like, if all of us don't grow at the same time, some of us are going to grow out of this company. And some of us aren't going to keep up. So like that dynamic, creating those relationships and understanding like, listen, this is really a team aspect, because like for us to be successful, we all have to be successful and we all have to grow. And coming to terms with that, it's a soul searching experiment.
So what was it you recognized? Like, how did you, I mean, what was the, we like to like get into the nitty gritty. So what was the step by step of thinking, man, this person isn't working out? Like, what were the elements that made you recognize it was the environment that you were creating or in charge of that was actually the issue?
Because I was looking at his work, and this was the time I had 2 estimators. One estimator I trained up for myself. I knew exactly how she worked. Like she was like a miniature, she had like a miniature version of me. I could pick up her plans without even looking at the plans previously, and I can understand how she got her numbers with her not really showing the work, but just showing like what she did, like by like how she colored things. And I'm like, I completely understand it. With him, I was not on that same level, because like I was bringing him in and like I didn't train him up, but he knew what he was doing. But like I didn't like.
You didn't know.
I didn't. Yes, but it wasn't that his work wasn't good. It was the fact that I was not assigning him the right stuff to do.
Okay.
And like the task that I was giving him, his level of expertise could have did so much more, but I didn't understand that aspect of it. And so like I didn't value it as much. And also in the point of this business, like it wasn't a need for me at that point, at that juncture in the business, but that actually had nothing to do with him. It was all like me and my business. And like at a certain point, like now I still talk to him, because like I really believe in like forming relationships. And like even when people go and pass, like you should still be nice to people and form good relationships, because you just never know for the future. But I look back over some of his stuff and I was like, wow, this is perfect. And the level of perfection that he was able to do with something, even though I didn't need that high level of like, when you bid something, you want to make sure like it's about 98% right. Because like if there's small things that like small parts of it that are missed, you'll catch that like when it's about to be in the contract phase, and like I look at it like very, very fine details before I sign a contract.
Oh, okay.
But like if it's 98% correct, it's good enough. His stuff was 100% correct during like just in the bidding phase.
Okay.
And I was thinking like, you know what? If I was doing more projects and like I was able to always have him at the point of fine tuning and making sure everything looks perfect at all times. And that's what I specialize in him doing. But I need to create that amount of work for him to do that, because you can't just do it on every project. He would have been completely, his view, like my view on his value to the company would have been completely different. But as a leader and as a business, we weren't there yet.
Yeah. So was it you? Are you the one who was, I mean, it was on you, it sounds like. It wasn't, any of your other family that are making this decision about the hiring and the fits and that kind of thing. So how do things generally work? Because if I understand it correctly, it's been about 10 years since you came into the business, but I assume it wasn't just like thrown into your lap.
No, it was not. 10 years I was into the business as like on the ownership side. Before then, I was out in the field, and like there's brick masons and then there's laborers, and I was the person like scooping up mud. I was just getting my hands dirty, doing everything, and like there was no little task. But anyways, you grow from that because you need to know, like, at least from my standpoint, you need to know all levels of your company. So when I was out in the field, I understood like how those things worked. And then like once I got in 2011, 2012-ish, I was starting to be more on the ownership standpoint, bidding projects, winning stuff. And then started being negotiating standpoints. And there was still a trust to be built, because even though we're a family business, it's still a business at the end of the day. And, my dad took a lot of time building this portion of the company. And you want to make sure that, like, he doesn't want to just let something die, because, like, it's his baby. Like, when you're building a business, it's your baby. Yeah. And so it was a little bit of hesitancy when I first came in. And I was like, hey, look, we should do this. He was like, no. And there was a lot of, no. But it made sense, because, like, listen, I have some off the wall ideas sometimes. And I'm like, we should do this. And it's like, no. But the point of being in business in me is you have great ideas. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Then you have a bunch of ideas. That's like the second tier thing. Having no ideas is a very bad spot.
Yeah.
Because if you have no ideas, you can't do anything different. So I was at least at like stage 2. I was having a bunch of ideas. Not all of them are good. But some start to fall through the cracks. He's like, let me try this out.
Okay.
And more importantly, he gave me the, what's the word? He gave me the freedom to also do things without like having complete permission from him. So there were certain projects that like I didn't even tell him about. I was just bidding it. And if it's a bid, if it's a project, it doesn't matter. Like if you win it, cool. Then like we'll actually talk about it. If you don't, it's just another thing in the air.
So he's letting you like experiment. And you had gone to school. So you were coming out of school and you had a degree in finance, is it?
Economics and philosophy.
Okay.
And another crazy part of the story, but like I had this degree in 2011, 12-ish, junior and sophomore summers of my college years. I was coming back home, and when I got back home, it was a little bit of a different vibe, because I used to always work in the company like on my spare time and just like, do laboring and brick masonry stuff as something to make money, but like as a part-time thing. I never saw myself as like an entrepreneur doing this. My dad was big on like, do something different. This is hard work. Don't try to do this. And I didn't know any better. So I was just like, okay, cool. I'm going to try to go work at Goldman Sachs, do something of that nature, be in the finance field. And 2011, 2012 hit. And that's when the recession happened. And when the recession happened, business slowed down very, very quickly. And it was like to a halt stop. And when I was working, I would come home and I would, usually do something in the business to work, but there was nothing to be done. And since there was nothing to be done about it, I was like, I kind of like didn't think anything of it because I wasn't, the owner of it. But I was just like, something's off. And then I like had the conversation with them. I was like, hey, so what's going on? Why is there, what are we doing right now? What jobs do we have going on? And it was kind of like no jobs going on.
Wow.
And that was interesting because previously, like I said, this is my dad's baby. Like, this is what he did. And like, after the recession hit, we didn't really know where to go. And it wasn't a we, it was a him at that point. And I was highly concerned. And I started thinking about things in my life. I was like, well, what happens if they don't get a project? The same things that I think about now, I was thinking about them like, if you don't get a project, you're not going to make money. You're not going to be able to eat. And like, this is all my dad knows. Like, he's been a brick mason for however many years, 30, 40 years now. And I was concerned that he wasn't going to be able to make it. So I was like, you know what? My parents have put me through college. They provided me opportunities for life. I was going to say, hey, I was going to give back a little bit. So 2011, 2012-ish, I started working on the company.
Were you like saying I have like finance knowledge or business knowledge and I want to try to apply this? Is that what you were?
No.
Okay.
I was saying, I'm just going to try to figure something out.
Okay.
I had no idea how any of this stuff was going to apply to the business world. Later on it does. Like, Cheryl's, it worked out fantastically.
Yeah.
Later on.
You were just trying to help. You were just trying to do something for your family business.
Just trying to help.
Yeah.
And I remember the first project we did, we went from building like entire high schools. Jura High School on Divine Street. That's one of our projects that we built right before this recession in 2007-ish. And the first project I built was like a small electrical box room, just very, very tiny. And like slowly we had to grow from doing this small building to like bigger and bigger stuff to like USC alumni to...
That's the University of South Carolina?
Yes, the University of South Carolina Alumni Center, to like building up, oh goodness, Wando High School's new athletic stadium, to like one of the projects that we're currently working on right now is the International African American Museum.
Down in Charleston.
And yes, and I want to say that like he allowed me to have a little bit of freedom because chaos happened, and when chaos happens, like a lot of opportunities to happen with chaos.
Yeah.
And like when you don't have a lot of hope, so if somebody's coming out there like, hey, look, we should try this, you're gonna say no a bunch, but after a while you're like, shoot, what I gotta lose? Go for it, kid. And I remember my mom, at this point we didn't even have an office. I was literally working from home. We couldn't even afford paper to like buy blueprints to take off with. So we had to figure out a whole different way to bid projects. And I remember I was in on the computer. We all shared the same computer at this point.
Wow.
And my dad walks into the kitchen, gets something to drink, sees me working. It's like 3:00 at night. He looks at me funny. I look at him funny. He just walks off. And I hear him like wake up my mom. I'm still working, but like I'm awake, and like I guess he didn't think I could hear him. And he was like, what is he doing? And my mom is like, Willie, he's just trying to make something work. And yeah, that's what it was. And so like, I say all this to say that like, everybody has a different entrepreneurial path. Some people got like venture capital and you're like, I got this great idea and we're going to go for it.
Yeah.
And some people like, you don't have much and like, you got scraps of just something that's left over, or you may not even have that. But like, sometimes a good amount of passion and determination can sometimes carry you a long way. So I'm always one of the people that says, if you got an idea, go for it.
Yeah. So what do you think it was that was kind of maybe the main one or two things that moved it from like, yeah, I don't think so, to like, now you're head of the company? Was it when revenue started coming in? Was it just the effort that you were putting in, or, the movement came in? I mean, what really helped you grow into that role?
So I tell this project, I won this like electrical box building. Literally, it's about big enough to store your air conditioning unit outside. Okay. Like it's literally maybe a 10-foot by 10-foot building. Uh-huh. It like 10-foot by 10-foot is just blocks.
So it's like a
bricks
shed
on the outside. I wouldn't even give it a shed. It's smaller than a shed.
Okay.
I remember I won the project and I was so ecstatic. And I'm going to my dad and my mom and I'm like, hey, look, we're in business. I won this. And my dad was like, okay. And once again, a project that he had just did like previous recession, he built an entire high school.
Right.
I'm building not even a shed. And he's just like, it's work. And so like, and you know what? The next project is just like a little bit bigger. Then we actually built a shed, like something very, very minute. And it was the fact that not only the smallest amount of revenue, because it was the smallest amount of revenue. I still don't understand, because my parents' house was on foreclosure. I don't even understand how we eventually generated enough money so that didn't happen. But it was the fact that it was progress, even though it was tiny, it was progress. And the fact that they saw the determination, they were like, okay, he's going for it. Let's follow suit. Let's see what happens. We have nothing else to lose because we're here now.
Mm-hmm. So like on the technical side, was it okay? Once you realize that you're taking this leadership role, how did you actually negotiate? Because at this point, it's like any other business partnership where it's like, okay, who actually calls the shots? Who owns what? And that kind of thing. I mean, those are interesting conversations anyway. I would imagine with it being family on top of that there are just some other things to consider.
So at the beginning, as I said previously, Willie called all the shots.
Willie's your dad?
Because it was his baby. Yes.
Are you a junior or are you?
Sure, close enough.
You have a different middle name?
I'm Will. No, he has different middle names, and that's a whole other story.
Okay.
We actually go by each other's names too. So like if you pick up, he's like, hey, I'm looking for Willie. I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. And, so he's Willie and you're William. Okay.
I'm Will, but
you're
yes.
Will. Okay.
But anywho, that dynamic, it started off as, okay, well, he's just trying to win a project. He's doing I guess he viewed me as an estimator. He, just somebody that's trying to do something. And then after that started going off, I started pushing for, hey, look, we're winning more projects. We're doing bigger things. If we want to grow, I need such and such. And one of the main things I was pushing for was I need somebody else in this office to estimate with me. Because the first part of business is like when you have your funnel system, you need like to increase your net. Mm-hmm. So the first way for me to increase my net was I need to increase projects. The only way I could possibly do that, besides like me just doing these projects, is I need to train somebody else to do that. Okay. And that was the first thing that I established. And this was after things started, we started doing a little bit bigger projects. We're starting to do projects that like resemble things that we used to do. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay, I see the track record that you had previously. I'm okay with it. And like slowly through like, this works, and even some of the slip-ups like that didn't work. Seeing the projections like and us going in like a positive direction, it slowly started to give me a little bit more access to doing what I wanted to do with the business till like it's now a partnership.
Okay. And then did you actually renegotiate your ownership? Like, like the owner, like the papers of the business.
He actually kind of like did that for me.
Oh,
he said, I didn't negotiate it because I didn't think about that. But he was like, well, listen, we're going to talk to a lawyer today and I'm going to actually write you in as part owner of the company. And I just said, okay.
Oh,
That
how
makes
did that
sense to me.
feel?
But it felt good. It was awesome, but it was one of those things where I don't know. It's like paper to me. Like I was more happy that he acknowledged me more as a partner, and like he was like validating, well, you're doing good stuff. I like where you're taking this company. I'm liking your directions. I see your dreams, and they're not just dreams. These can actually be reality. Let's go for it. I enjoyed that more than just the letters on the paper, because that's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's a
that
big deal.
validation from
And did it feel like it was? Did it feel like it was hard won, that validation, or just kind of a steady progress kind of thing?
That's actually something that we talk about. Like when you say hard won, I'm assuming you mean like, was this like a goal like accomplished for me? Define hard won real quick.
Yeah,
first.
well, I just meant like, I mean, was it a fight? Was it a struggle? I mean, I understand that there was like a progression, right? But I mean, just was it a smooth road or was it a bumpy road? That's what I mean. Were you thinking like, I want this validation from my dad, or did you have some level of validation that you wanted?
I knew I didn't really want. Once I got the validation, I felt awesome. But I didn't really want the validation because it was more still like, it's the necessity point. I wanted to grow the company. But like, one of my phrases that me and my friends still talk, like say to this day, is game recognizes game. And I know for a fact my dad built a business and like it was prosperous. Like he was legitimate, solidified, bona fide masonry contractor. That's what he did. Having someone say, hey, look, you're doing good work that I know already does good work isn't a goal, but it is like it is a checkbox to say, hey, look, you're doing the right things. Because if that person says you're doing the right things, he knows what he's talking about. This is good. Yeah, this is good. And there's lots of fights, especially with the family business, but that's again with any businesses. Like everybody's not going to see eye to eye, especially when you're in a partnership compared to like when there's like completely different ranks. And even when there's like, you're going to push for what you think is important in the company.
Right.
Because like that's what you see every day. That is what, that's the force that you live in. From his standpoint, he sees like a whole different world, and like it's still the same picture, but like he's not zoomed in on what I'm zoomed in on. But like that interaction from validation, like, hey, look, I like your view. Let's start adding this view to my view, and let's start to align more. It was a give and take, and there was fights because, like I said in the beginning, there was lots of ideas that he was like, terrible, awful. And my dad, he's an awesome person. And there's one of the great things that like we do all the time, or he does all the time, is just like, that's a terrible, not, he don't want to say like, that's a terrible idea. We're like, no, I think that's a good idea. And then like time goes past, he's like, hey, well, what about this idea? And I'm like, that's exactly what I said previously. But in my head, I'm not going to say that. I'm just like, yo, that's a great idea. That is what's up. And that's how like, okay, I know this is good because like, he's not going to come out and say like, hey, I like your idea, but it's more like, hey, I think this is a good idea. That's my idea. Yeah, that's not important. This is a good idea.
You don't need the credit.
All right, cool.
So how do you so when there are a lot of fights, I mean, what do you have a process for, deciding? I mean, is somebody always the trump? How do you actually get through to the other side to where the decisions are made and the progress happens?
So this is not just a me and him thing, but inside of my teams a lot. One of the things that we talk about, and it's just kind of organically grew. Everybody on my team has a lot of passion, especially the people that are close around me. To the first estimator that I hired, or the estimator that one of my very earlier hires, she even approaches me and she's like, hey, Will, I think we need to do this. And sometimes I just shoot her down. I'm like, that's not a great idea. Or that's not the time for it. But just like her relationship, me and her relationship, and my relationship with my father, we don't, even though we're passionate about it and like we really, really try to like push our ideas, at the end of the day, we know that like, hey, look, this person does good work. We value each other's opinions. We know that like this person has brought lots of value to this company. I'm going to, even though I don't completely agree, we'll leave the argument, disagreement, but we'll talk about it again. And like, that's a lot of things that we do. Like, we rehash old things that we thought previously wasn't a good idea. And like, we bring it back up. We write things down that at the time seemed terrible. But like, that's what we talk about, like our ideas. You have great ideas and then you have a bunch of ideas. Yeah. It's really good to have a bunch of ideas because you never know which one of those bunch of ideas that don't seem like the great idea at the moment gets pushed up to those great ideas. Yeah. It's because the worst thing is you don't want to have no ideas, because if you have no ideas, you can't really grow because like there's nothing else new under the sun that you're going to do. So like you need to incorporate something to like get better or like try to become more efficient at it. So that's something that like we stress, not just in a family business, like, but not just like from me and my dad's point of view, but like from everybody in our company, like take ideas. And even if we say no to it right now, do not be afraid to bring it back up. I'm not going to ever just like say, hey, look, this is a terrible idea. This will never work. Because you never know. Yeah. Like, and after times change, we could pivot. This could be completely a great idea.
So you said before the call that, before we started recording, you know, that you're in a transition phase right now. So you've been heading the company, but what's shifting right now in terms of leadership, handoffs, and that kind of thing?
Previously, it went from like my dad was doing everything and I was just working under my dad to like a partnership. And now it's like I am the one in charge. And we have like, me and my dad have these candid conversations like, Will, what do you want me to do at this junction? Because I don't want to get in the way of your dreams, or I don't want to get in the way where you think this company should go.
Wow.
And he said, like, this is so not a true thing, but like, this is what he says. He's like, Will, I'm getting old. And he is getting old. But he's like, Will, I'm getting old. And my ideas are old. And since that my ideas are old, I may not always have like the newest thing to think about, but I at least know the way. So if you come up with a great idea, I can at least like fine tune your ideas and say like, hey, look, this is what you want to do. Okay, if you want to do this, let me try to help you in that regard.
Yeah, so applying that wisdom like, to your innovation.
Yes, that's kind of like the things that we're actually talking about right now. Because, for example, the apprenticeship program, we're about to start up a new class. Hopefully the end of this year or maybe sometime next year. We're going to start up like this would be round 3 of apprenticeships. One of the things that he's thinking about is like, hey, well, I want to become more hands-on with like teaching these people, and more hands-on just teaching apprentices, estimators, and giving my wisdom and knowledge, because I may not have the newest ideas. That's what he keeps saying, but it's still not true. But anyways, it's like, I may not have the newest ideas, but I want to give my know-how and wisdom to this because, like I said, this is a thing for the community. And so like, I don't want to leave this earth without my knowledge being passed on to somebody else. And that's this knowledge that's passed on to somebody else. I don't want it it's something valuable. And I want to instill this value into somebody that didn't have that value previously, that can go off and make a future out of it. And like he's really passionate about like not keeping it. Yeah. And all of that's a completely, I guess that's like a transition for life thing, because in a family business, like it's still your legacy. And the concept of leaving your legacy behind, apparently that's hitting home for him a lot harder now. Yeah. And he really wants to spread that value. He doesn't want to just keep it to himself.
And how do you feel about that? Like where in that whole legacy conversation do you see yourself?
Um, it's weird because like I've been in this business and like I've been in the business all my life since like 12 or 13. Like I was out in the field. And then like I'm seeing it as like an ownership standpoint from the ages of 20 to 30. I see what he's saying and I recognize it. And it's like an aha moment. Like just right now, I have these great ideas. Just know for a fact that one day you too will not think that you have great ideas. And there's going to be somebody younger than you that has a little bit more determination, that has drive, that wants to do it. And like, you need to make sure that you keep cycling through new ideas and bringing in new people that like look at the world or think of the world completely different from you. And that's something that I'm learning very early, because I don't think he ever thought of, like, he would ever think that he's not going to be the main person in control or the main person that's coming up with the innovations. And I never, like, seeing him as my dad, I never thought that he would be that person that's not leading. So the fact that he's going through this transition stage that, like, I'm going to pass on this legacy, I'm already thinking, like, okay, game recognizes game. If this person says this is how you do it, I need to go ahead and start preparing myself to be like, okay, I don't want to ever get to a point where like I don't have new ideas and there's nobody else around me that's not having new ideas. That's like a terrifying thought. So like I want to go ahead and put things in place so that like this company is continuous and always be able to create value. Because I feel like if you're in a business, the only way to make yourself future-proof is to be able to always be adaptable, flexible, and always being able to shift. And if you're stuck in your ways and not able to shift because you just think you know everything under the sun, that's almost like the pride right before the fall. So I don't want that to happen. So
and
that's something that I'm taking back right now.
Do you feel ready?
Yeah. Like, I didn't know I was being groomed for this role. Like, once again, all my life, or before college at least, and not all my life, 2/3 of my life, I never thought I wanted to own my business, but I did not think it was going to be my family business. I thought it was going to be something completely different because my dad said, this is hard work and you don't want to do this in your life. Also, before we end this interview, I want to make sure I talk about that again because, I want to really end that stigma. But I never thought that I was going to be in like an entrepreneur. I never thought I was going to be in business, in this business. But from learning it in the field, from like learning laboring to the masonry to the superintendent, now to the position of owner, since I know how my trade operates, I feel equipped to take over my trade and be a huge player in it.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. So what is it you want to talk? You talked about the stigma of we don't want to do hard work. Is that what you wanted to address?
Yeah. No, it's the stigma of, and it's not just masonry, it's plumbing, it's HVAC system, it's construction, it's even industrial work. It's anybody that is doing trade skills with their hands. There's a stigma that when you're working with your hands or you're trying to create, not with just your mind, you're going to go home and be unhappy with your life. But that is the furthest thing from true. I know for a fact, when I was on the third date with my wife at the current time, which previously was my girlfriend, I took her out in Colombia and we were eating. And she asked me, what did I do? And I was like, I built things. And she was like, oh, is there anything that you know? Is there anything that I know that you built? And I was like, yeah, come on, let's get in the car. And I went around the city and I pointed to buildings. I was like, the Strongthrust Fitness Center? Yeah, we built that. The Suggs and Kelly building, we built this. And then like I showed her all the things, and the rewarding feeling of knowing that even after I pass long, like way after I'm gone, and this is with the apprentices, with anybody else, because once I teach you somebody, if I teach you anything, you're going to go be able to apply this to anywhere.
Yeah.
It's going to be a rewarding feeling. And that rewarding feeling, that knowledge that I built this part of the community. I am part of the reason why Columbia is beautiful, and I am part of the reason why not just Columbia, but like all these other buildings and all these other parts of the community is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rewarding. And on top of that, the wage is good. Like I said this in the very beginning, I am able to support my family. I have a house. I have cars. My dad had a house. He had cars. I never felt like we were going without.
Uh-huh.
The worst times that we felt was like during the recession, but like it wasn't just us. A bunch of other small businesses felt like they were hit hard and they were trying to figure out how to make it. But as a whole, the stigma behind this is not good work, it's a very false narrative. And no, I'm proof that this is good. This is good all around.
Awesome. Well, we are right at the end of our time together, and this has been awesome. I feel like we could talk for another hour. I'm just so glad to get to know you, and thank you for sharing your story with us and everyone else. And again, bringing that family aspect into it, because that's a big part of an entrepreneurship that isn't necessarily, I think, celebrated as much. You know, it's like, oh, I pulled myself up on my bootstraps and this, and you know, we love founder stories, obviously, but there's that other aspect of like, you know, maybe there's a foundation before you come in and you know, in your role as the leader. So it's a different kind of a founder story. But thank you so much for joining us. And for anybody who's listening or watching, you can catch this episode again or the rest of them on all the platforms where you enjoy your podcasts, and we're on YouTube. And also they're inside our Innovates digital zines that come out monthly. And so we are in 3 South Carolina cities and rolling out to other cities. So take a look, check us out at orangewhip.com. If you have anything you want to share with us, any feedback for Will, or want to get in touch, hello@orangewhip.com. Also, Will is at PatCon Industries in Columbia, South Carolina. So any last thing you want to share, Will, before we say bye to everybody?
For anybody that's looking to start a business or do any of that venture, say hello chaos, because it is definitely a thing. But it's good. It's a great roller coaster.
Yeah.
I would really, it's not for everybody, but for the people that want to try it, you should go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Will.